This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Athletic Greens. Ensure your body gets the nutrition it needs. Athletic Greens has a special offer for our listeners. Just go to athleticgreens.com/Spartan, and then when you place your order, they'll send you a free travel pack with 20 individually wrapped packets. That's a free offer just for our listeners.
Welcome to Spartan Up Podcast. We're here at Dodger Stadium. It is the Spartan Stadium race. Incredible day. People having a ball out there. I'm going to reverse the order of how we usually introduce people. We got our wonderful assistant, Andrew, who makes this all work. We've got the person who puts it all together, Marion, our producer behind the camera there. We've got Johnny, we got Tim, we got Sefra, and we got Frank Ferrante. And I want to tell you, Frank, one of our greatest interviews we've had in a long time. Man, you are fantastic. So great that we actually asked you to stick around and help with the panel because you've got some really neat insights. So.
I thought it was because you locked the door.
Well, there's that too. That's Joe's method. He just locks people in. So Joe's not here.
Don't worry, we have apples.
Joe couldn't be here right now, and that's why we've got Frank. But you know who else we've got? We've got a guy named Brendan Murphy.
Yeah.
Brendan.
Wow.
Lives in Malibu. World-renowned artist. But he didn't start that way. You got to work backwards. This guy has had more life experience and more changes and more pivots, and he talks about that. He talks about how you're successful at different things and how, if you want to change something in your life, you got to have the courage to do it. So that's most of us in some way or another. So stick around, listen, and find out how Brendan did it and how you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, really extraordinary.
Yep.
This one's really extraordinary. Just like his little baby girl that was hanging out, extraordinary as well.
Yeah, you also never know what you have inside of you until you uncover it.
Until you come on the podcast. So
Until
let's go watch the podcast.
Okay.
We're here for Spartan Up with a really close friend of mine, and somebody, we actually did an interview with him, about 2 years ago, the day that Harrison Ford crashed his plane in California on a golf course. I was interviewing Brendan, but we lost the tapes. So we're doing it again at Dodger Stadium. This guy is a Superman. He's a former professional athlete, basketball player, then tennis star, Wall Street trader, now becomes like a famous artist, and he's selling paintings all over the world for big, big money. And by the way, no matter where I am in the world, this is the longest introduction I've ever done for anybody. No matter where I am in the world, if I got to meet somebody, I just call Brendan and say, who do you got in Mongolia? And he hooks me up with like Genghis Khan. He knows everybody everywhere.
Right.
All right.
My currency really are my friendships.
Yeah.
You especially, and the Spartan Nation. But that's my currency, I've learned. I wish I had more of the other currency sometimes.
actual cash.
But yeah, it's by having good friends and a very strong network, it actually helps me make the other. That's part of my business.
Sure. And they're closely intertwined.
Absolutely. It's become. I've done a few pivots, as you have, and I enjoy pivots.
Well, you grew up in Rhode Island.
Talk about a pivot, and now I live in Malibu.
Nice, with the Malibu Mob.
Yeah, right. I think I'm alone up there, the Malibu Mob. But yeah, it's much. It couldn't be more different.
But you grew up in a perfect household, where
I grew up. Well, my parents, yes.
Yeah.
I grew up in one of the nastiest, rudest, roughest environments you could, outside of probably Queens, Brooklyn, those kind of places. I know that now.
Right.
I know that now, having been all over the world and left and going back.
Sure.
It's really.
But otherwise, you think it's normal.
I did think it was normal.
Right.
And I realize now that it was, never mind progressive, whatever the opposite of progressive was. And that's where I came from.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought was okay.
Normal, yeah.
And
you played basketball as a kid?
And I played basketball, and I was the only white guy on the court, and drug dealers, and playing, it was just a really rough environment. Which I learned. I grew up where, as you know, being tough is a badge of honor.
Right.
What I've learned is it's great, but if you're not smart, it doesn't do anything for you.
Sure.
And if you're not, let's say, flexible, or if you don't understand that life truly is liquid, you can't just keep running through the wall.
Right.
You can't, because you'll hit a real thick wall.
Yeah, I'm learning that.
Yeah, no.
I'm getting tired of banging up against the wall.
But your toughness has gotten you here, but you discount your ability to adapt, your liquid problem-solving abilities. You always undermine that. And that's one of your best qualities. You just don't like to talk about it because it makes you sound soft. But it's not.
You're like a psychologist too.
No, I just think that I've been around as you have.
Yeah, right.
And you know from where you came from, very similar.
Yeah, similar backgrounds.
How people spoke, how people approached the day, where the ceiling was. I mean, the ceiling was here compared to where you don't have a ceiling. Your kids don't have a ceiling.
Sure.
Our ceiling was just get a house, don't kill anybody,
Don't
go to jail.
Our ceiling was a drop ceiling. Right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and I think once you get out of that and live beyond it, and you mentioned Bracken, guy's a CEO, world class, and he's telling you about you can't help but become, even more enlightened and self-aware, right?
So you pull yourself out of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You go play professional basketball. Overseas.
Yeah, Germany.
How long?
6 seasons, 6 years.
6 years.
The game kind of passed me by. 6'4" shooter doesn't get it done anymore. But I developed, again, I speak German. I still visit 2 or 3 times a year, and probably some of my closest friends. We play every year. We play now it's the 45 nationals, but we all get together and play as a team every year in the World Championships.
Awesome.
Same guys.
And then from there, you go to Wall Street?
I go to New York. Didn't know anybody, not one person.
Yeah.
And I was a trader, a Wall Street trader. And I loved the juice, and I was doing very well, but I didn't feel happy. In other words, I still approached the day in a positive manner, but I knew it wasn't me. I just didn't know what, as you know, saying you're a creative person from where we came from, you get beat up.
You get beat up, yeah.
The kids up at Brown University, I had to, when I was growing up, I couldn't tell anybody. I liked hanging around Thayer Street.
Right.
That's where all the weirdos were.
Right.
So I still had this at 29 in the city. I was afraid to admit that even though I was making money, I was in Wall Street, I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I hated it.
So when did you find out you were an artist?
I knew I was a creative person. So the first thing was accepting that. And I think New York helps. Because there's a bunch of weirdos.
Melting pot.
Weirdos.
Yeah, right.
I still use the term, and I'm the biggest one.
Right.
2 things, very quick. My buddy was the stage manager at the David Letterman show, Big Gene Szymanski, and he would have me come down whenever there was a great act, and I'd go and watch the rehearsal. So he says, "You got to come today." So I'd go down at 2:00. There's 3 people there, me, David Letterman. And in walks Robert Plant. And my knees don't knock for anybody. And that was one of the times. And he's in sweatpants and a t-shirt with his daughter, his new wife, and his ex-wife. And I said, all I know is that's what I want to be. And then I went back to the office, and I'm on this trading desk. And not one guy resembled in any way that lifestyle. And this is beyond fitness and all that. And then 9/11 happened. And I was on a roof watching the buildings going down and lost some friends. And anyone that was there and felt the jets go over, felt like 20 feet. That was a mirror. For anyone not doing the right thing, that was a mirror like, okay, now I'm going to do what I should be doing.
Right.
And I snuck out of the city, and I had a little cabin on a river in Rhode Island. And I bought the canvases, and I decided this is what I'm doing. I'd already painted as a hobby. I said, that's what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to be a creative person. And I never went back to the office. And that was the beginning.
Of painting.
It was a very broad pivot. It had made no sense. It was a big step into the unknown. But I embraced that.
But I mean, going from basketball to Wall Street is a big step too.
Yeah, but I was comfortable in the unknown. I lived there.
Right.
A lot of people don't. And see, you have helped people make pivots, but part of it is they have to embrace the liquidity of life.
Right.
You give them the grit and the tools to, the fortitude, but they also have to embrace it. That's the reality. If you're going to make a pivot, you better get ready to be scared.
And deal with whatever comes your
Yes.
way. Yeah.
And this is how, and then you say, then you tell them this is how you deal with it.
Be comfortable being uncomfortable, I like to say. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
That's the unknown. And that terrifies people. So I think I had an advantage on some level in that it didn't terrify me.
Yeah.
And
Let's why don't we go do some burpees? Take a burpee break.
We can try.
And then we'll come back and talk about how people can maybe apply some of these creative learnings to solve some problems in their life.
Absolutely. I think the creative process is, though it's not climbing walls and stuff, but emotionally and intellectually, it's the same problem solving. It's the same process.
Sure. Let's do them.
Hey, so I love this stuff that we get now and then for the podcast. This athletic greens, I'd never tried this before. I drink a lot of green stuff.
Yeah.
I have for years. This is the most drinkable one that I've ever had. Like, it's easy to go down. We're going to try and drink this stuff every day. It's nice that it actually is something you look forward to.
Yeah, and it's got everything you need, right? All your nutrition's in there. Over time, we've met a lot of vegetarians, fruitarians, those kinds of people.
He knows what a fruitarian is.
I do know what a fruitarian is.
That's impressive.
Okay, so the point is, it is tough to get all those nutrients every day. We all have a very busy life, right? And so you make excuses and you grab something on the run. But here, everything is packaged for you.
Yeah,
all
but
in
not
one
only
spot.
is it tough to get the nutrients, if you look at the different microclimates it's from, it's globe artichoke and it's cacao and it's slippery elm, which all grow in different places all over the world. So if you're going to go forage all those things together, that's like a...
Right,
that's
you
like
don't have the
That's
time.
like circumnavigation of the world. So it's a lot easier when it's in a little package.
Yeah, and 75 different ones in one package.
All in one.
It's pretty sweet.
It's pretty sweet. Like this
All right, well-
gondola going up the mountain.
Drink
Oh
it
yeah,
up.
mention that. We are in Morzine, France right now. It's absolutely unbelievable. We're on a gondola going to the top of the mountain, and we've got our athletic greens, so
The
it's pretty
hills
good.
are alive with athletic greens.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Athletic Greens. Ensure your body gets the nutrition it needs. Athletic Greens has a special offer for our listeners. Just go to athleticgreens.com/Spartan, and then when you place your order, they'll send you a free travel pack with 20 individually wrapped packets. That's a free offer just for our listeners.
All right. Those burpees were hell, but you have an open mind and a creative process that you do, and somehow you smile through these things. Let's apply some of that to our regular lives. What do you got? Like, how can we do that?
Applying
Some of your
creative
process
process to problem solving.
The problem solving, right?
I mean,
Because
it's
you didn't
very-
want to do the burpees, and you applied a creative process to it,
Yeah.
and somehow you
I
got
chose
through
a more efficient route sitting here. No, well, again, I think you start with a concept or an idea. Those words can be kind of flip-flopped.
Yeah.
And then you have to engage, you have to commit to finding you have to jump in. You have to take that next step.
Yeah.
Most of my artwork and my sculptures and all that stuff right now, at least for the last year and a half, deals specifically with taking that next step. That's the biggest part. Once you're in there, you can't, it's like this race. You can't, once you're halfway through, you can't go backwards.
Sure.
So you got to finish. So that's very similar to the creative process. But it behooves you to kind of know how other people did it before, how other people did things before, how Joe problem solved. Why not know how 10 different guys? And I think that's what your podcast brings, is a look at 20 different guys, how they problem solve.
Right.
It helps you. So again, creative process, very similar. And then there'll come a moment where you got to make the 3-pointer. You got to make it. First of all, you got to take the shot, and you got to either make it or miss it. You miss it, at least you took it. At least you're on the court. At least you.
Yeah. You don't.
You're gonna miss.
You don't make 100% of shots you don't take.
Yeah.
Right.
But you can't wait for another sports analogy. You can't wait for the perfect pitch. You can't wait for so there's a spot there.
I constantly fight with a bunch of people about this idea of aim, ready, fire, and I'm like fire, ready, aim. I don't know if that's how you.
But you also live. You are a very present person. That's why you and I get along. I don't know one time where we've been on the cell phone when we talk, and that's awesome. So you're ready to fire all the time.
Right.
And so I think there's something going on also. And the reason why people love this and love these, those moments is because they really are right there. That part where I've got to make a decision on the canvas, right? There's no going back. I could screw it up. That's life. That's living, right? And the way you live and your team, you guys are always ready to fire. And I think this is all about, the more you're in the moment, the better you can problem solve.
Yeah.
Right? I take a walk with the dog every day, probably 3 times a day, with no phone, no nothing. I specifically try to do trails where the phone doesn't work. Right. And what happens? There's like all this clutter, and about 7 minutes in, I start to just think about that. I start to problem solve. Imagine that. Clarity.
Yeah.
Right? So...
we were talking yesterday about a monkey brain, monkey mind, where your mind is racing or whatever, and I said, I meditate when I run because I think what I do is I get to a place where the monkey gets tired and passes out. And then all of a sudden your mind becomes calm, right?
Yeah. And then you can't lose.
Right.
Then those moments they're not so scary because hey, if I miss, I'll do it again. I'll do it again. I'll figure something else out.
Yeah.
But if you want to pivot, you want to problem solve, you want to be a better person, you want to be more successful, I think you've got to be really kind of as much in the moment as you can be. Which it doesn't mean you're going to make the right decision, but you got a better shot. If you're distracted and you're not paying attention, and you really have 0 chance.
Sure.
It's like trying to hit a pitcher and looking up in the crowd.
Right. Ain't gonna happen.
Nobody's on the cell phone in the dugout.
Right.
It's very clear. I mean, you can't play, you can't perform. So why would you assume you can make a good decision in life if you've always
devices around you? Yeah.
And that just
yeah.
And again, in the studio, in any music studio, nobody's on the cell phone.
Right.
I don't know.
That's I think that's a big takeaway. Hard to do, but I think it's a big takeaway.
That's it. And your philosophy is just do it, put it down, which I get.
They should have, I just envision, they should have like an Alcoholics Anonymous for cell phone addictions.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's crushing. But you know what? For me, at my age, because I still am trying, I'm still ambitious, still trying to do well. I'm like way out. I mean, it gives me a chance to, I'm the hare, right? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm the tortoise. I've always been. And now I'm catching them. Yeah, go ahead, keep doing that. So I'm not saying that much about it. Right. You're in a position where I think you should address it. Yeah. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And what's great about this is no one even is carrying it for 1 hour, and they have a blast
in the race. Yeah.
And I think if they carry it over, look,
maybe the first obstacle should be if you have your phone, throw it in this bucket.
They would do it.
Right?
Yeah. I'm not trying to just focus on that, but I mean, you talk about problem solving. I think being in a studio, working out, all these things offer some clarity.
So big takeaways for the audience. One is don't be afraid to pivot. You've pivoted 3 or 4 times in your life, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
The other is think broadly.
Embrace the unknown. Life is liquid.
Right.
Life is not A plus B equals C. Right. And as soon as you accept that it is liquid and you start to move that way, you can get down that river without drowning. Right. If you keep thinking it's A plus B equals C, man, it's going to be harder.
Right.
So it is liquid. Accept it. Embrace the unknown. You're in there. You'll get through it. Use your tools. Use the guys you're in, right? Use some of the tools I use. Go for a walk. I don't know.
Get rid of the devices. Be in the moment.
Yeah. Clear your head. Obviously, the physical fitness part to me is a no-brainer. Open up your hips. If you're a guy, open up your hips. Move more. You shouldn't have back pain. Eat better. All that stuff should be a no-brainer.
I like that tagline. Move more. That's it.
Yeah.
You're the man.
We did it. Only took, what, 3 years? Try not to lose the tape.
Pivot. The big pivot, right?
Pivot, yeah.
What are you talking about? You got to have, not be afraid to take the big step.
Yep.
And that guy had a lot of big steps through his story. But in a mental image I got that nobody got to see, but I want to walk you through quickly, was him and Joe on the floor doing some kind of
Hip
stretch.
openers.
And him telling Joe, open up your hips, as they were rolling across the floor. Anyway, that was a little segue.
Yeah.
But taking these big
It was like watching Swan Lake.
Yeah, and
Or Black Swan.
one of the things he said to me again that resonates is you can't, and it was a sports analogy, but you can't hit a pitch if you're looking in the stands.
Yeah, that was
right?
pretty cool.
Right, so don't be distracted, right? Again, it's about focus, and it's about knowing what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so for all of us and all you out there, he's talking about the distractions of life, right?
Yep.
Get rid of your phones and the rest of that.
And that's not a
and
popular
focus
thing
on
to
what's
say
going
these
on.
days.
No, it isn't, but
Powerful.
it was a good lesson from him, I thought.
Frank, one thing you talked about that I know you talked about in your interview too, he talked about coming from a neighborhood where it wasn't cool to admit that you liked art. It wasn't cool to admit that you were sensitive, that you had to be tough.
That's true.
And you're we're coaching on the
I'm
fly
bad at
because
that
it's Frank's first time as a panelist.
He's got the loop.
But
He looks real good.
but in terms of the ability to dig in and become who you are, even if it's not who the people around you were encouraging you to be, and you've experienced
Well,
that.
I can specifically say that my experience with that when I was a little kid, watching Ed Sullivan, which was a religious thing. Everybody had to be home to watch Ed Sullivan on Sunday night, and it was a variety show. And I remember as a little boy, I saw flamenco dancers. And I was completely intrigued with these people. But I mean,
show us how to flamenco.
when the guys that you look up to are Nunzio and Fredo and those guys, you can't walk up to guys like Robert De Niro and say, hey, I just saw this thing on Ed Sullivan. I'd like to be a flamenco dancer.
Yeah, sure.
There wasn't this. This is before they invented space. There wasn't the space to do that. And what he did was really remarkable because I think it was women in the 70s. I think that what's remarkable about him is that he did come from that place, and to ascend from there is not easy.
No, sure.
It's not really. It's not an easy thing to do, and to go into that path of self-discovery is really very quite remarkable and courageous on his part.
100%. And I guess for anyone watching it, the other thing that's really great too is that he did go through a few incarnations, right? He was a professional athlete, and then he was a trader. And then as a trader, he said, I'm making money, but I'm not fulfilled. I want to become an artist. And so...
But he said he still did it positively, which I think is
that's
a really key concept.
Sure.
Even though he knew in his gut this wasn't his lifelong, long-term end game.
He still brought good energy.
Yeah, he still brought good energy to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, even if you're not happy, you don't need to complain to always make your environment and ecosphere like miserable with you.
And it's probably why he's been successful at each of the things he's done. Because if
Yeah.
you're a trader and you hate being a trader and you tell people you hate being a trader, you're not going to be a good
Not
trader.
every part.
But you can do something for a while, take the benefit from it, the
Sure.
the life lessons from it, and then translate that into the next
Well,
thing.
it's not making your circumstances who you are.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
It's not seeing yourself as your circumstances.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Tim.
Well, no, I'm going to backtrack some here, because you already covered a little bit, but you talked about
Flamingo backtrack.
growing up and idolizing that being tough is kind of the mark of a man, right? And he said, but that's great, but being tough is irrelevant unless you're also smart.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Because being tough will only take you so far. And it can take you.
Yep,
You know,
sure.
and it can break down walls or whatever. And you can get a certain distance. But if you don't have the intelligence to combine with it, then all you are is going to be
the pivotal thing
a bug.
about being a mature man is you at one point, if you're fortunate, you recognize the difference between power and force.
Yeah.
Because that whole tough thing, those people I grew up with, right? They didn't have the courage to expose themselves, to really show who they were. That's not really courageous, and it is, there is a toughness.
Good point.
It is.
That is a great point.
But to really show. Like, hey, man, to, let's say, for example, I'd say that, to have the courage to
live your vision,
to tell your wife, hey, man, right now I'm scared of everything.
It's funny when you said that, it brought back a personal memory of mine from years and years ago. So I was in the gym and I was lifting weights and I was bench pressing, and I asked, this general happened to be like the only guy around, and I asked him if he would spot me, and he did. And when I picked up the weight and I put it down, and he said, man, I couldn't have done that. And I looked at him and I'm thinking, of course you couldn't. But what I said to him was, well, of course you couldn't. I'm a lot stronger than you. You're just more powerful than me.
Wait, he couldn't have done what? Asked for help?
No, he couldn't have picked up the weight.
Oh.
No, but he was powerful in a different way.
He's used to being a powerful man.
Got it.
So, I said, no, I'm stronger. You're just more powerful, which is what you're talking about.
I actually want to defer to Sefra, for example, because we got three reasonably powerful men here. We also got a powerful woman. I want to hear what you had to take from
The
it.
seed goddess.
The seed goddess.
Blessings. You're on the panel forever. Sorry, Joe.
No, Sefra,
I did have some poignant points, but they've like dandelion seeds. They've
Vapor.
Wait
blown away
till
from-
you get older.
no. So that
Your whole head.
What my beautiful takeaway with Brendan was, right, is it's you can see why his currency is his friend.
Yeah. That was
He's
his
like
comment.
Yeah, right.
because he said like it's the network of people I have, and Joe says anywhere I go in the world, he's the one that I call, and you can tell because it's like his soul has been squeegeed from the inside. His eyes are clear,
Yeah.
his heart is clear, his advice is like very real and not mushy or garbage, but like very honest, but also subtle and gentle and zen. And then you see him just snuggling his daughter, and it's like
so beautiful.
It's like this guy is pure love. He's pure goodness, and he's also tough in a beautiful way and real.
And
So-
he's got tremendous presence. And again, that's a theme with a lot of our guests lately is their presence. And it doesn't matter how much you know if you can't present it in a way that people care.
Right.
So I'm going to jump to Spartan.com/podcast where you're going to meet a whole bunch of people with presence, with passion, with a great
We're present
message.
there.
Week after week. Subscribe on YouTube, iTunes. Tell your friends. Frank, you rock. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Toodles.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Athletic Greens. Ensure your body gets the nutrition it needs. Athletic Greens has a special offer for our listeners. Just go to athleticgreens.com/Spartan, and then when you place your order, they'll send you a free travel pack with 20 individually wrapped packets. That's a free offer just for our listeners. Thanks for listening to another epic story of success. If you like our show, be sure to tell your friends about it. We want to hear from you. Just leave us a comment below if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening, go to Twitter and find us at Spartan Up Pod or Instagram at Spartan Up Podcast, and let us know what you think. Then go subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen to our show. Spartan Up is brought to you by Spartan Race. To find a race near you, visit Spartan.com.